T.E. Lawrence. Perhaps no other name from the First World War has the same almost myth-like status as Lawrence of Arabia, the modern Robin Hood with his tales of courage and adventure that remain in our imagination even today. And that's the man I'm going to talk about right now. I'm Indy Neidell. Welcome to a Great War bio special of Who Did What in World War I, today featuring Lawrence of Arabia. Thomas Edward Lawrence was born in Tremadog, Wales, August 16, 1888. Quite early in life, he developed an interest in medieval history and military fortifications, and would even choose military history and strategy as his field of expertise for his exams as a young man. In 1908, he joined the Oxford University Officers Training Corps. Britain did not practice conscription, so such corps gave students the chance to practice at least basic military training. In June 1909, having been recommended for a job in Palestine, he set off for the Ottoman Empire. But when Britain and the Empire found themselves on opposite sides of the Great War in 1914, Lawrence was assigned to Cairo and promoted to staff captain.
Hey mate, that's not T.E. Lawrence. That's actually Peter O'Toole playing him in Lawrence of Arabia.
Okay, who are you?
Oh, sorry. My name is Nick Hodges from History Buffs. I'm reviewing historical movies all the time. I was just talking about the legendary Lawrence of Arabia. You should come over and check it out. I mean, did you know that the soldiers in the movie are actually played by the real Jordanian Arab Legion?
The Arab Legion? Well, you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention. You see, I too like historical movies.
Great! I'll make sure to send my fans over to you if they want to learn more about the real Lawrence of Arabia. See you around.
I will see you around. Thank you. All right. His job at the official survey of Egypt at Giza was to collect maps for the war in the Middle East. He would monitor the drawing and printing and also supervise the encoding and decoding of telegrams. He apparently enjoyed his work, which he immersed himself in when his brothers Frank and William were both killed in the European theater. Now, Britain had its hands full in the Middle East. To protect the Suez Canal from the Turks and secure Egypt, 400,000 men were needed. The Gallipoli campaign was a big drain for most of a year, and the expedition up the Tigris and the subsequent siege of Kut, with its multiple failed relief attempts, showed that something different and drastic was necessary to disrupt the Ottoman Empire. So the British High Commissioner in Egypt opened negotiation with Hussein bin Ali, Sharif of Mecca, who wanted the creation of an Arab state that included the entire Arabian Peninsula, Mesopotamia, Syria, and Palestine. In return for British help, he would give Britain economic privileges. Thing is, Chief of Intelligence Sir Gilbert Clayton didn't want to make concrete concessions and had this to say: "We don't want a powerful and united Arabian kingdom, not under the Sharif or anyone else, if it is even possible." And what Britain, along with France and Russia, was planning was carving up the Middle East into spheres of interest after the war. Lawrence had actually written a memorandum about Syria and about the cultural and religious differences throughout the region, and how for many outside of Damascus and Aleppo, the concept Syria didn't mean anything, and the whole was only really held together by the force and bureaucracy of the Ottomans, as indeed most of the Middle East was. He was ignored. What happened was an agreement that the Arabs would support the British in exchange for supplies and money. And to make the whole thing seem like a real Arab revolt, one major city must be taken, preferably Damascus. Lawrence was chosen to supervise the plan. So on June 5th, 1916, he set out with Near East expert Ronald Storrs to support the Arab revolt, which Hussein's sons had proclaimed against the Ottomans at Medina. They hadn't had much success so far, though, even against just local Turkish garrisons. Indeed, the population of Mecca was mostly pro-Turkish, and many Arabs began to desert, even in such early days. The British provided a heavy field battery, machine guns, 5,000 rifles, and 100,000 pounds worth of gold. But when Lawrence entered the camp of Faisal, one of Hussein's sons, he was underwhelmed. One company of Turks, firmly entrenched in open country, could have defied the entire army of them, and a pitched defeat would have ended the war by sheer horror. I concluded that the tribesmen were good for defense only. They were too free-minded to endure command or to fight in a team. A man who could fight well by himself made generally a bad soldier. His works proved prophetic, and you could really see the clash between modern and traditional attitudes. The Bedouins were courageous fighters, no question, but artillery and airplanes threw them into disarray. Lawrence rode and fought with Faisal's forces, and their aim was not to destroy the Turkish army, which they couldn't, but things like bridges and railways. Still, by the end of 1916, the Arab revolt was in full retreat. Faisal's and his brother Zaid's 2,000 men on the run as the Turks advanced on Yanbu. But there, British warships were at port and trenches were dug that could protect the city with machine gun emplacements. However, the Bedouins refused to get into the trenches and panic swept the city, though Faisal and Zaid managed to escape on the ships. The revolt needed an urgent success. So, with the help of Lawrence and a lot of British money and guns, Faisal recruited 10,000 men to fight. With huge numerical superiority, they stormed a Turkish camp near Wag and even took and plundered the city itself. The guerrilla war also continued, mainly against the Hijaz Railway between Damascus and Medina. The main problem was that the revolt lacked support. There were, of course, intellectual circles that supported an independent Syria, but the bulk of the population were pro-Ottoman. Many Muslim theologians supported the Turks and outlawed the Sharif, and the expected conflagration did not materialize, and the Ottoman soldiers were not deserting in droves as hoped. Others would have to make the revolution for them. In March 1917, the first attack on Gaza under General Archibald Murray began. It was a tough defeat for the British. The second attack failed as well, but the general situation was changing. The Ottoman hold on Palestine was weakening as Turkish protection money was drying up, and more Arab tribes were joining Faisal, who, with his father, had been given £2 million of British money, equal to about £100 million today. Over the next few months, the revolt avoided the main Ottoman armies and laid ambushes for patrols and reserves. They raided railways and telegraph stations, but as the British gained a greater foothold against the Ottomans in Palestine, it became clear they had no intention of making the Arabs independent. The cabinet raised the Arabs to fight for us by definite promises of self-government afterwards. I had to join the conspiracy and, for what my word was worth, assured the men of their reward. In our 2 years of partnership under fire, they grew accustomed to believing me sincere. But of course, instead of being proud of what we did together, I was bitterly ashamed. That was from Lawrence's book, 7 Pillars of Wisdom, published in 1922, which is full of his adventures and encounters, about which many historians argue the veracity. But it wasn't really a historical record and more a literary source. So it's uncertain what happened and what was part of Lawrence's exaggerations, which created his legend. And that legend was indeed growing. But the differences between Lawrence's war and the war on the Western Front could not have been greater. No messages, no instructions, no superiors, no subordinates, no doctors, no billing, no meals, and no liquor. And the reports ignited British imagination. He bragged about masterminding the Aqaba campaign, but it was really just an attack on a barely defended rundown town. He thought highly of himself and claimed that the Ottomans had a bounty on his head, but in fact, no military leader of Turkish or German forces ever mentioned his name. But he was greatly admired and respected among the British and was promoted and given accolades. One incident that's pretty controversial among historians is the Daraa episode. Lawrence wrote that one night he disguised himself and entered the town to spy on the Ottoman garrison, but he was recognized and captured. He writes that he was then brutally beaten and taken before Hajim Bey, the governor. Bey flogged him and sexually abused him, and Lawrence, bloody and bruised, was thrown in prison, where an Armenian doctor washed him and showed him how to escape. Was it all true? Maybe. Maybe not. What is true is that in mid-1918, the Palestinian front collapsed for the Ottomans. Eventually, they even gave up on holding Damascus and established new lines in the Taurus Mountains. On October 1st, 1918, Sharif Nasir and Lawrence of Arabia entered Damascus, and the Arab revolt was complete. 2 days later, T.E. Lawrence began his return journey to Britain, and for him, his legend would only grow and grow to incredible heights in books and in films. What remained in the Arab world was disillusion, and as the war ended, the region was carved up according to the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which took no consideration of ethnic or religious differences when dividing the land, and is a prime cause of the past 100 years of conflict in the Middle East. T.E. Lawrence himself had a troubled life post-war and indeed died in only his 40s, although that's beyond the scope of this channel. But Lawrence of Arabia, what of him? Was he a hero? Was he a liar? An actor who loved his unorthodox role in the romantic Orient? Or maybe a tough warrior who pushed himself to the limit, fighting a war that nobody truly believed in? Whoever he was, his legend is going to live on for a long time to come. Just a bizarre side note here, in 1991 I worked at a vintage and classic car auction, right? And one of the cars being auctioned off was Faisal's old Rolls Royce. He was King Faisal by the time he had it. Now I noticed that over the doors was the emblem in metal, right, of the Scottish Clan Mackay, which I recognize because my mother's family is Clan Mackay, and we had the symbol over our fireplace when I was a kid. Now it's a hand holding up a dagger and says Manu Forti on it. And I asked the guy who was selling the car if Faisal had, in any way, any Scottish blood in him. And he said no, he just liked the emblem and he used it as his own symbol. True story. If you'd like to find out more about Lawrence of Arabia in film, you can check out Nick's channel History Buffs right here, where he analyzes the movie for historical accuracy. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.